I will show some images, so maybe you will see better from there. Ah, okay. I do support the last intervention calling for unity against sectarism and also analyzing the pretension of the European left and the Western left to impose solutions and to decide what is best for Palestinians and many others, because this is just a consequence of a colonial left and 5 centuries of ethnocentrism. And I really support the intervention of our Polish comrade who said we have to point the USA as the chief of the orchestra and the power behind Netanyahu. And I really think this war against Palestinians and many other people in the Middle East is part of the big US world to keep the world domination and has to be connected. For those who don't know Investigation, it's a media group, independent. It's a video network and also publishing books to help people here to form themselves, to discuss and convince. And I think we need more cooperation at international view to exchange what is produced and to give materials in different languages to help people to convince, because the war of information, the battle of information can be won not by the people who are here, but only by hundreds and thousands of people who will daily, where they are, fight for the truth. Concerning the question of who is behind Netanyahu in Israel, we recently published Said Bouamama Strategic Handbook of Palestine and Middle East, which shows the role of Great Britain, USA, and France. And I will not speak about this today, but we have Bouamama with us on Thursday, and he will explain that. Our specialty with in Test Media Group is to produce books analyzing the war of the propaganda war, the lies with the images, like in this one, and the next one is coming about 7th October. It's a book analyzing that the images that have been showed to the public here to manipulate, and also the images that have been hidden. And very briefly, I would like to show you some examples very briefly. And again, for those who are in Brussels on Thursday evening, we have a whole evening concerning that. The narrative here against the West is everything started on 7th of October. And in the media, that is presented like a movie. Everything starts on 7th October. So you cannot understand what happened before and what has produced the situation. And for example, and that's also a book we have produced, and I hope we can have it. Well, it is translated in English and in Arabic, but it has no promotion. It is not printed. And we made a book, sorry to expose this here, giving the words to all the Zionist leaders, founders, leaders, and strategists. And for example, Ben-Gurion explaining in 48, why are there so many Arabs here? Why didn't you expel them? That kind of quotations, and we have 100 like this, the worst quotations, that kind of thing is completely hidden to the Western public. Because if you just listen to the Zionist leaders, you understand the conflict, because they have written for themselves the truth about what they are going to do and the crimes they commit. What is, of course, hidden is the fact that Israel is a rogue state, a pariah state, stealing territories from the beginning and more, making life of the Palestinians impossible. What is hidden is that when they speak about the massacre, the terrorist massacre of 7th of October, they hide that since the beginning, Israel is committing massacres and massacres everywhere, and that is normal, that is the right to defend itself. If the people with the Western television would see that and would see that history, they would understand the conflict, and that would be dangerous. The recent history is hidden too. 2 days before 7th of October, there was a pogrom in Huara. The word is not my word, is a word of the chief commander of Israeli forces in Cisjordania. He said that is a pogrom. That is also hidden. What is hidden is the fact that 7th of October was not, as Emmanuel Macron said and many others, this was a terrorist operation to kill as many people as possible because they are Jews and blah, blah, blah. The fact that is hidden, it's a military operation described by the US, the Israeli and the US also, experts and strategists. It was brilliant. The operation, it was hidden that it was an offensive against the 10 military bases that are encircling and massacring Gaza since years. So under the international law and the UN proclamation, every people has the right to defend itself against a violent occupation. So this was a legitimate and legal operation, 7th of October. 10 military bases attacked, prisoners, destroyed of the whole intelligence system, which brought the Israeli army in a big chaotic confusion, and their response was very problematic. That is hidden completely. That is also hidden that they didn't know about the festival, and it was a surprise for them. They didn't think there would be so many people, and this is an explanation because indeed many civilians have been killed in this circumstance. And what is hidden to the Western opinion is that the festival, Supernova, was just very near the main military bases, the place of the division Gaza, the main military objective. The festival was just there. And by the way, it was announced by the intelligence service and some officers that it was very dangerous to maintain it there, which raises, of course, a lot of questions. Why was it maintained, and why was the response of the Israeli army so weak on this day? But that's another question. What is hidden when they present images of the houses in the kibbutz completely destroyed with a hole of 1 meter in the wall and things like that, or hundreds of cars exploded? Then they say, look, this is the barbarian terrorist action of the Hamas who made that. But on the other hand, what have you seen? The resistance is coming on on foot, with small motors, or with a special, I don't know the term in English, if you can help me, parapente. Well, yes, thank you. So when you travel like that to get out of Gaza, the maximum you can wage is a light machine gun or things like that. And how can such light weapons produce such a heavy damage? It's impossible. So the truth is, these damages were made by the Israeli army, helicopters, and tanks. And you find that in the Israeli press. They don't hide it. But what is now in the Israeli press is hidden in the Western press. We may not know. Of course, as you know, and as Julian Assange said, every war is based on lie. The key issue of this book and my key idea about the battle of information is the genocide has been made possible only by a massive operation of disinformation, of massive operation of war propaganda. Babies beheaded, women systematically raped as a strategy of war, and prisoners, hostage, massacred deliberately as many as possible. All these 3 points are false, but they are in the mind of the people now here in the West. If you go to the street and ask to the people what happened on 7 October, it's babies, women, and hostages massively killed. The experts know this is bullshit, this is not true. The Israeli press writes that all this is not true, but this massive operation was successful. The New York Times produced fake news because in the book we have been making, we analyze all the testimonies of the so-called people who assisted to rapes. 19 testimonies. We analyzed everything. Actually, there's no woman. Only 18 are men, and they say they have heard somebody who have assisted to some rape. And when you analyze the versions, it is changing, always increasing more and more, and it is contradicted by other people who give their testimonies, or it is simply impossible to believe. And that is also recognized in Israel. And the New York Times, since the testimony was not enough, they added in a literary way a lot of details to make it really atrocious. The goal of this operation was to assimilate Hamas to ISIS, Daesh in French. And this is an operation started by Ariel Sharon after 9/11, after the World Trade Center, and continued by Netanyahu. That's the key of his propaganda. Our enemies are ISIS. Doesn't mind if there was a big fight between Hamas and ISIS in Gaza a few years ago, doesn't matter. The question also hidden is why did the resistance capture so many prisoners or hostages? And you see here a few. And what is hidden in this question? Not to kill them, to exchange them. Why? Because actually Israel has, since years, thousands of hostages, men, women, and also children, which is strictly forbidden by international law. And you have the figures. Much more prisoners, I call them hostages too, in Israel. That is completely hidden, that the goal of the operation was to liberate people and liberate everybody, and that Netanyahu refused it. That Israel is practicing systematic torture of the prisoners, which you can see by how they are when they get out. And our analysis is that if the media had done their job, but they proclaim, there would not have been a 7th of October, because there would be no prisoners since a long time. But the way of the media presenting them is to humanize the Israeli prisoners and to hide the Palestinian prisoners who are never presented in the same way. That is, and we saw that about Ukraine, we saw that about Iraq, Libya. We are specialists in war propaganda, and each war is the same, but this is a masterpiece. The key is to make a selection of the good victims and the bad victims, and to hide the bad victims because we make bad victims, so we may not show them and we may not bring emotion about them. There is, of course, a discussion in the book, but I don't mention it, just mention it, don't explain, no time. How many victims, how it happened, and we made a real investigation about how many people, by whom, and where, and if something contrary to the international law happens, or maybe happens, we recognize it and we don't want to hide it because we think this investigation has to be completely, of course, because Israel refused a mission of investigation, we cannot reach the truth on certain points, and that would be necessary, but that will take time. So we have an whole study about what happened in the festival. This is my advertisement to respect my promise, but I nearly finished. And we analyzed that and what happened also on the roads, which is very important. Of course, we analyzed the Hannibal doctrine, which is completely hidden in the West, one exception with Libération, who spoke a little bit about it. And we analyzed the fact that many Israelis, probably around 100, have been killed by their own army. And how can we say that? Because we have Israeli testimonies. This woman, for example, she explained it's an Israeli tank who was sent, who killed my husband and many people in this house where we were prisoners. And normally there was a talk, there was a negotiation, and the idea was to exchange, but Netanyahu and the army decided no exchange, no negotiation. They applied this doctrine. If you have some prisoners, you kill everybody, so you have no problem anymore. This is hidden to the West. The same. Okay. And to finish, we analyze the speech and the propaganda, there's no other word, of people like this one. And we analyze very concretely how he's manipulating his opinion with a lot of emotion, a lot of talent, we must recognize that, to bring fake news and to justify his apology for terrorism. As a conclusion, this is very important because in France, you have now a sort of intellectual terrorism. Everybody who says the 7th of October was provoked by Israel, and just look at the history, there is a risk that they send him to jail. Everybody who says the Palestinians have a right to resist, this is international law, he may go to jail. And we have some conference in France in the next weeks. I guess I know what will happen. And I think we really need to cooperate at international level to produce instruments to translate what we are doing. And I'm interested what is done in your country, in your language, because as the previous speaker was saying, we absolutely need unity, cooperation, and with that we can win the battle of information. Thank you.